In the last lecture, we looked at how we can learn virtue through emulation of people we look up to. An exemplar inspires us to become better than we are, but the exemplar might not even know we exist. That's obvious if the exemplar is fictional, like Robin Hood, or a real person who lived long ago, like Confucius, or just someone who lives far away. An exemplar could be a parent or teacher, but they usually become less influential in adolescence. After a certain point in our development, we tend to be heavily influenced by peers, both positively and negatively. My student, Diana Hoyos Valdez, is writing a dissertation on the role of friendship in acquiring virtue. She argues that the experience of having friends, as well as the friends themselves, can help us to become more virtuous. I cannot say that Aristotle thought of friendship exactly in this way, but his account of friendship in the Nicomachean Ethics can be a useful starting point in thinking about the way friends help us grow morally. Aristotle thought that there are three kinds of friendship. Friendships based on utility or pleasure are relationships in which the friends like each other because of their usefulness to each other or because they give each other pleasure. Such friendships end when the friends are no longer useful or pleasant to be around. Character friendships are different. These friendships are based on the goodness rather than the usefulness or pleasantness of the person. When two individuals recognize good character in each other and they spend time together, engaged in activities that exercise their virtues, then they form this kind of friendship. But how does having a friend with good character help you to have good character? And does friendship itself help us to develop virtues? The classic legend of the friendship of Damon and Pythias reveals some of the core virtues in a friend. This story was told by Aristoxenus, a student of Aristotle, and it appears many other times in classic literature. According to the story, Pythias and Damon, who were followers of the philosopher Pythagoras, traveled to Syracuse in ancient Sicily during the reign of the tyrannical Dionysius in the 4th century BC. Pythias was accused of speaking against the tyrant, and he was sentenced to death. Pythias accepted the sentence, but he asked to be allowed to return home to settle his affairs and bid his family goodbye. The king said he would have to be a fool to agree to the request, believing that Pythias would flee the country if released. Then Damon offered to take the place of Pythias while he was gone, and should Pythias not return, Damon was willing to be put to death in his place. The king thought Damon was crazy to agree to such a plan, but he accepted it. While Pythias was away, Damon never doubted that he would return, even as the days progressed and the guards taunted him. When the deadline arrived and Pythias still had not returned, Dionysius prepared to execute Damon. But just as the executioner was about to strike, Pythias arrived, explaining in a frenzy that his ship had been captured by pirates who threw him overboard and he had to swim to shore. He had returned, prepared to be executed. When Dionysius heard the story and realized what their friendship meant, he was so astonished that he pardoned Pythias and said he would release them both if they would teach him how to be good enough to deserve such a friendship. What does Dionysius have to learn in order to have a good friend? In this story, we see some of the most important virtues of friendship, like trust and trustworthiness. A friend needs to be able to trust and must have acquired whatever virtues it takes to be deserving of that trust. Pythias and Damon were also willing to make supreme sacrifices for each other, even at the risk of death. Philia, or the love between friends, sometimes needs to be supported by courage and tenacity and self-control. What about honesty? Can you think of any other virtues that a friend needs to have in order to be a good friend? It is interesting that Aristotle thought that in friendship, justice is not needed, because friends treat each other better than justice requires. He says that when people are friends, they have no need of justice. But when they're just, they they do need friendship in addition. Are there virtues we learn from particular friends? Have you ever felt that your friend influenced you to become a better person? Aristotle talks about friends spending a lot of time together, and he focuses on the activities they engage in. Friends are bonded together in the highest kind of friendship when they're both virtuous. But I wonder about that. We can love someone just as much who has faults, and although a vice can damage a friendship, it seems unlikely to me that love depends upon the degree of goodness in the other person. I suspect that each person is more than the sum of all her qualities. Once I asked students to think of someone they love and start making a list of that person's qualities. When you do that, obviously the list gets long and the task eventually becomes tedious. But suppose the list is as long as you like. Do you think that the list sums up the person? If you met another person who had those qualities exactly, would you love that person just as much? I think the answer is no, or at least not necessarily. If the person is not replaceable by someone with the same qualities, the person must be more than the qualities. I think that friends see something in the person that is not the same as all the qualities. An image that expresses that idea appears in Plato's Symposium, where Alcibiades compares Socrates to the hollow clay statues of Silenus that were sold in the marketplace in Athens. Silenus is ugly, but when you break the figurine apart, you find tiny golden statues of the gods inside. Alcibiades says that Socrates is ugly like Silenus, and most people don't know what Socrates is like on the inside. But once he got a glimpse of the godlike figures Socrates had inside him. I wonder if love is always like that, although it's probably more obvious in erotic love than in ordinary friendship. But it seems possible to me that close friends see a better self than the one we actually are, and reflect back to us the kind of self to which we can aspire. If they do that, that would explain how a friend can help us in acquiring virtues.